Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad that you clicked the button and thought, I want to listen to this podcast on body image. I know this is a difficult topic for so many of us, including myself. It's a lifelong exploration of who am I? What do I value? How am I taking care of myself? What is the function of my body? Are there ways that I could get it to function better? Do I like how it looks? Do I not like how it looks? It can just be a very delicate topic for so many people. So I just want to acknowledge that going in. And I also, having done this topic a few times before on the podcast, I've gotten a lot of feedback. And sometimes people don't even listen. They see the topic and they assume that we're talking about yoga for skinny people and kind of like the wellness influencer type thing. And that's not what we're doing. That's not what we've ever done on this show. So if you're going to listen, sit down, relax, or go for a walk in the woods and listen and try to manage your own energy, your own triggers, your own assumptions, your own stories. I honestly want to talk about this because it's so important, but I also want each of us to do our internal work around it. And even if we feel triggered, that's why we have a psychologist. That's why we have a best friend that we can go to and really work through it. Please don't read the show notes halfway through and contact me and tell me that you don't like it. Because what Trey is offering today is a beautiful, beautiful gift, a journey that she's been through with her own body image, and so much goodness to offer us and to help us do that work if that's a journey that we want to be on. So I'm going to welcome Trey, and I've known Trey for many years now, and I saw her develop her program called Weightless over many, many years. I believe in her program and her approach, and it all boils down to we are suffering. We each carry very heavy things mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. We carry them around in the world and we put them on like a backpack. And Trey's whole approach is let's look inside the backpack. Let's see what areas are causing us suffering. And sometimes when we do that, it creates a shift in our weight or how we look or how we feel or how we function. Other times it doesn't. But the point is that when we use yoga or yoga therapy as the mechanism or the modality to do this type of self-reflection, self-awareness, self-actualization, it's a very gentle approach. It's an approach that requires a lot of depth, a lot of courage, a lot of bravery. And eventually we put the different pieces of the puzzle together to see something new that maybe we hadn't seen previously. So I love this episode. I love all that Trey has shared with us. I support it. And in the areas that I feel a little activated, a little quickening inside of myself, I've decided I'm going to journal about that. I'm going to bring that to my therapist. I'm going to use that as good food for thought. All right, let's go meet Trey. Season 9 of the Yoga Therapy Hour. Welcome. This year, many of you have volunteered to come forward and tell your stories. It has been one of the highlights of all the years we've been doing the Yoga Therapy Hour. I mean, we've had several hundred episodes over the last 3 years. We've had almost 200,000 people listening to these episodes. It's a big deal. So to come on and tell your story and be human and be imperfect, it's been wonderful to see so many people with humility and grace and generosity and kindness. So many people telling their stories because they don't want other people to suffer like they have. And there's a way forward. As we look through the lens of yoga, yoga therapy, Ayurveda, so many of us have found that healing, a different kind of healing than we found through other types of modalities. So as we move into season 9, I just want to thank everyone who signed up this year and also let you know that I can't take any more stories. It's been such an overwhelming response. I am completely booked. We are completely booked through the end of the year, which is a really great problem to have. And then in 2026, we're moving on to a totally different topic. We had a year of stories and we'll go into something else in 2026. So thank you all so much for participating. There will be an opportunity for all of you to participate in 2026, but I'm going to do a big series on the 8 limbs of yoga that's going to take us over a year. So if you volunteer to be on the podcast in 2026, I have very specific topics listed out that pertain to the 8 limbs of yoga. And maybe you'll want to talk on one of those. All right, everyone, have a great day. Let's go hear our speaker for today tell their story. Welcome to the Yoga Therapy Hour, Trey. I'm so happy to see your smiling face.
Oh, thank you, Amy. I'm so happy to be here and connect with you again today.
Trey, where are you in the world? I always like for our listeners to know where we're talking from.
My physical presence is in Atlanta and my home and my immediate family. But, my spirit is global. So I travel as much as I can. And now that I have a person in college, I'm looking at that more deeply. So we'll see where I land. But right now I'm in Atlanta.
And where is your person in college?
She goes to Oklahoma City University. Far, far away, and she's a musical theater major. So she just completed her first year and enjoying a little summer work, and then we'll be headed back in August.
Beautiful. All right, Trey. So I'm just going to do a little, I don't want to say a trigger warning, but I kind of feel like I need to around this topic.
Fair.
We've had other people talk about body image and relationship with our bodies. And in the past, people have kind of boiled that down to weight loss. And I don't think our conversation, although someone may develop a new relationship with their body and weight may be lost,
Right.
That's not really what we're talking about, is it?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. In my work through the last 20 years, I was a personal trainer for 7 years. I have been a yoga teacher for 20 years. I've been a yoga therapist for 12 or so years. And one of the things that I have observed and experienced, and honestly, even in my own aging in the last 20 years, but I'm 56 now, body image is not necessarily or always about appearance. As we grow in our time on earth, what I have found is that body image changes, or what we think body image is. When we're younger, it can equate to aesthetic value, beauty, what is my physical size. But I think over time, body image starts to change. I work with many, many people who are in their 70s and 80s and beyond. And their body image is most often about the aging process and what their body is capable of, no longer capable of, and how they might lose some sense of value or worth in the world as their autonomy does decrease over time as we age, which can happen. And so I have found that body image, although we think about it kind of in a binary way, am I pretty or not pretty to the world? Or do I have a nice physique or don't I? It's really much more complex than that, especially as we begin to age. And I will caveat to say that I don't exclusively, but I primarily have worked with women through all of these things. I identify as a woman. And so most of what I'll be speaking about today is from a woman's experience. And I will also caveat that I'm a white woman. And most of what I will say will be from a white culture and a white embodied experience.
Yeah. I think that's so important to recognize that each of us has this lens, this culture, the way other people see us,
Mm-hmm.
I think I want to go back to your story. Can we start with your story? And how did you start working in this area and get interested in this area?
Oh gosh. I grew up as a person that was not in a desirable Western American female body. I was overweight starting as, I don't even know at what age. I do know that my pediatrician put me on a diet when I was 9 years old. That was my first diet experience because my doctor felt that I was overweight. My mom, this was the early 70s, right? And so she was like following what the doctor said. And she's like, yeah, my kid's too fat, whatever. I don't mean it to be flippant when I say whatever. I always think context is important,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, at any rate, having that first diet experience at such a young age, coupled with being teased and bullied all the time for being overweight, for being told things by my family like, gosh, you have such pretty eyes. You would be so pretty if you would lose weight, or you have amazing hair. Like your hair is so beautiful and long. And if you would just lose some weight, you would be such an attractive young girl, right? And these were the messages that I received growing up. And so by the time I was in high school and started early college, I was 100 pounds overweight. And I carried that with me. And then I found yoga. And that's the interesting thing is that I didn't even know what yoga was. I started practicing yoga in the late 1990s. Truly did not know what yoga was because I had spent so much of my life in an overweight body or a body that didn't seem to interact well with the world. I wasn't sports inclined. I wasn't a dancer. I was a creative growing up. I did the reading and the writing and those things. And so when I discovered yoga or yoga discovered me, I like to kind of think my first class was Kripalu yoga. And if you're familiar with yoga lineages, I assume people would listen to this who maybe aren't so familiar. Kripalu is a very body-based yoga. And it was ironic because the body is the last place I wanted to explore. Like I always diluted my body experience with food, with alcohol, with nicotine, with drugs, you name it. I was trying to disconnect from my body. And then here I go in a yoga class that's all about exploring your body and your experiences of your body. And the very first class I took, I cried and I cried and I cried. I didn't even know why I was crying, but I knew I had to go back. And that started my yoga practice. And what I learned through the practice, and we'll probably dig more deeply into this, is that part of who I thought I was had been formally and almost entirely defined by outside sources.
Meaning their view of what
Their
they,
view of who I was.
yeah. When I
Yeah.
look at you, I'm going to define you this way. And then little Trey internalized that. And that was your image of yourself.
Right. And so it was only through, practicing yoga and being consistent in a practice and having a desire to learn about myself from the practice really helped open the doorway for me to start teasing apart the physical me who showed up in the world and the internal me who I really was at my own essence.
I mean, I think it's obvious. It seems like those were two different people at that time.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Two different people. But that's the beauty of it. The posture and the body is just one part of it, right? There's all these other parts that help us open the doorway and walk through to something that's more optimal for who we really are. And so I just really learned how to study myself through these practices, right? Like I would ask myself, like, what makes me feel most energized? What gives me energy? And it's not just about the food, right? That is part of it, right? But it's also about my relationships to myself, to the world, to my parents, to my society, to how I ingest commercials and media, right? And to say, like, when I was growing up, I was still doing my term papers on a typewriter. We didn't have computers. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have social media and internet. And so the way in which these things impact is not only, but especially our young people who identify as women is just so much more deep and invasive than it was when I was in high school and they had, locker doors and bathroom stalls to write on. It's just so much more invasive.
Or posters, like there'd be a poster of Cheryl Tiegs on the wall or something, but like we didn't
Right.
have image after image after image for 7, 8, 9, 10 hours a day of unrealistic body expectations and what a woman should look like to please another.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. For me, yoga allowed me to begin asking the question, what else could be true
About you.
about me, about life? Right. Because what happens is body image gets conflated with self image and self worth.
Yep.
So for the longest time, I felt like I was unworthy because my body wasn't pleasing. And then the other subtle messages that get sent, especially from this Western society about body size, right? If you have a body size that's too big, you're lazy, you don't have self control, you don't have willpower, whatever the things that we say or think or believe to be true. And great example, the beauty industry. So if I look at the beauty industry, which is sending me the messages of what I should look like, right? No wrinkles as you age, the perfect smooth skin, hair conditioner for the perfect straight hair, or this for the perfect, right? Like everything is about perfection. And if I look at the beauty industry, and this is part of what yoga does for us too, is it grows discernment. Because not only am I looking at myself, I'm looking at what's being fed to me and I'm saying, okay, that's what they're trying to feed me. What's their motivation? Well, they're trying to sell me beauty products. Of course, they're going to tell me I'm fat and I'm ugly and I need cream so I don't have wrinkles. So, really learning how to create space. For me, it was yoga. For somebody else, it might be something different. But for me, the yoga practices are what created the space that allowed me to grow awareness of myself and the outside world. And then to more importantly, grow what we call discriminative awareness or discernment, to really step back and say, okay, let's give this a minute and see really what is in this space here.
Yeah. I have this thing that I think of every day, and I just want to run it by you because it's kind of cute to me, but I feel like I go through the world trying to hold my belly in and make sure I cover it with the right clothing. And what do all these people think of my belly? And there's a lot of negativity in my mind about that. But when I come home and my cat gets on me and starts doing their little biscuit,
the mud hide, yeah.
They get such joy out of my tummy. And I would say, oh, sweetheart, you love my tummy.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the tummy isn't the problem. My ideas, my accepting of society's judgment, I think that's what you're talking about in discernment. When
Yeah.
really the question might be, am I happy? Am I healthy? Am I taking care of my body in a way that helps me do my work in the world and feel good and not in pain? And really just getting a lot of clarity about that and maybe even blocking out people's judgments if
Yeah.
it's fit for me.
To relate to your story, it reminds me many, many years ago when I was a personal trainer, one of my clients signed up to run a half marathon. Running was never anything I was vaguely interested in. I always did enjoy weightlifting and I would walk and stuff, but like running a half marathon, I was like, oh no. But because I was her personal trainer, I felt this duty that I had to do this half marathon with her and support her and all the things, right? So I start training for the half marathon. It's fine. But one day I go out for a run. Well, and this gives you some idea because this is the time when we were running with iPods, right? We didn't have the music on our phones. We were still flip phones, right? So we had iPods.
We're going to take just a little break here to talk about something that matters to us at the optimal state. And that is our Monday night community that has been together for many, many years now. And we'd like to invite you in. On Monday nights, we have a topic of the month. And in October, that happens to be integrating mindfulness into your daily life to manage pain. Now, whether you have pain or you're a yoga teacher, an Ayurvedic practitioner, or a yoga therapist, there's so much to learn about pain care as it relates to emotional intelligence and self-awareness, and basically how to manage ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So each week we have a yoga sutra that we talk about that relates to the topic. We do some postures, very gentle. We do some breath work, some meditation, and then we come back together at the end for a discussion. So we would love to see you in October of 2025 and join us for our Monday night classes. You can find the link to sign up in the show notes. Thank you for listening. And now we go back to the podcast episode and our guest telling their story.
So I prepared to go out for my run that day, and I had not charged my iPod. So my first thought was, well, I'm not going to go on my run today. And then discernment. I was like, come on, Trey, you have this thing that you're trying to do. Just go for the run without the iPod. You'll survive. Maybe you'll have a new experience. And so I did. And one of the realizations that I had, amazing when we're in silence, what we can, uncover when we don't have the music to distract us. And as I was on the run, I had this bling of awareness that almost everything that I had thought about myself and about my body in particular was somebody else's baggage. And I had picked it up and just kept on carrying it down the path. And in that moment, this was probably one of my big ahas. I was like, oh my gosh, it's not about changing what I see in the mirror. It's about changing the person who's seeing.
Right.
And that was a pivotal moment for me. And, I had been in yoga at that point for probably 10 years. So it's not even like I was still brand new to yoga, right? But yoga is just this unfolding and unlayering of all the suffering that we carry in our baggage. And sometimes that shows up as body image or self-worth issues or any myriad of things that we face within our daily lives.
I can so relate to this. The number of people who maybe they don't even mean harm when they're commenting about our bodies. And I just always say to myself, that comment tells me more about what's going on in their mind than it says about my body. Like I have to continuously tell myself that, okay, they probably didn't mean any harm. And now I know how their mind functions.
Yeah. But Amy, on that point, right? Like for me in my personal life, and I was a yoga educator for many years, context is always important. When my mom was carrying me, her OBGYN, very strict, told her she was not to gain more than 20 pounds her entire pregnancy. Back in this day in the late 60s, sometimes doctors would tell pregnant people to smoke to keep their weight down, right? My mom didn't do that. She waited until after I was born to start smoking. And honestly, I can't blame her looking at some of my teenage life. But, the right context is important. I'm not commenting on if things get carried from womb through birth. That I don't know enough about that to comment on that. Like if my mom carried this idea, and she's a petite woman, and even now still in her 80s, she's still a petite woman. And so if she carried this belief that as a pregnant person, she shouldn't be more than 20 pounds overweight, then what happens when her child becomes 10 pounds overweight, 15 pounds overweight, 20 pounds overweight? Oh, at 9, she gets put on a diet by the pediatrician, which is exactly what you're saying. Understanding that there's context in everything. Even if I don't know the full context, if I can go, oh, well, what else could be true? Then it creates this grace for me that might eventually create some kind of love for myself.
Yeah, I love this conversation. I was reading recently about J. Krishnamurti, who's a famous Indian philosopher from South India and also connected to the Krishnamacharya tradition. He was a philosopher, and people would come from all over the world to ask him questions about spirituality and liberation and all of it. And for many, many years, he'd go on and on and on and explain all the details of everything in Indian philosophy. And then one day he stopped and he flipped it. And every question that came in, he said to them, let us use this question to examine the structure of your mind.
Mm,
And so it's kind of what you're saying, like, we won't know all the context. I can't examine the structure of their mind, but I can know that that's their work to do. And
hmm.
I don't have to put that in my backpack. It's a
Yeah.
hell of a lot of work to examine the structure of my own mind.
Right. 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 I'm trying to figure myself out. I don't need to try to figure anybody else out. Yeah. But it's easy for us to sit here and talk about, right?
Yeah.
And when body image gets conflated with self-worth and self-image, which happens, I would say probably 99.999% of the time, it's not so easy to say, oh, well, that's a reflection of them because we internalize everything.
All day, every day. Oh, it's
All
them, it's them, it's them, like that.
Yeah. And so, it really does take a commitment to your own well being to say, maybe this is not who I want to be in the world anymore. I don't want to interact within myself this way. I don't want to have these kinds of interactions with the world. And so let me find something that helps me stabilize my position within myself and then go from there. And again, it might be yoga for somebody, it might be something else. I started with Sweating with the Oldies with Richard Simmons.
I was going to say, what you're really talking about, if I were to put it in yoga speak, is that our bodies are this not something to be fixed, but they are unique to us and for us to figure out how we want to feel in them during this lifetime, for us to connect with, maybe even try to improve the function so we can stay here a little bit longer and have a little more ease. But what is the start of that journey? I mean, you do this. You have a program called Weightless, which we'll talk about later. You're a yoga therapist and a coach. Like, can you give us some of the kind of steps along the road? And I don't know if this came organically from your own experience that you figured out the path, but I think many of us don't even know where to start.
Yeah. I think one of the ways that we must start is by understanding what our own core values are. All of us have many values that we use to make decisions and choices and navigate the world. 100 maybe or more. But we all also have a set of, 5 or 10 core values that are really non-negotiable things for us. And so one of my pieces of work in my own svadhyaya, right, self-study, and what I do with my clients is to help them first get in touch with their own core values, right? We're going to start putting away the baggage that other people gave you, and we're going to start to discover what is really true for you. So in my case, when I was growing up, one of the other messages that I received was never go out in public without your hair and makeup done because you never know who you're going to run into. Again, context. That's my mom, right? Baby boomer. She, late 80s. That's how she grew up. When she was married to my biological father, she would get up and do her hair and her makeup before he ever got out of bed in the morning. So context, this was her lived experience. And I carried that with me until at some point I was like, wait, this aesthetic and this like getting up early to do makeup and spending all the time on the hair and everything, like that's important to her. That's not important to me. I don't want to smell and I want to be healthy. I want to be able to go on hikes. I couldn't even walk a mile without being winded and my legs hurting, right? I wanted to be able to feel free in my body. And so when I started understanding what my core values were, and it went as a wheel out into all the areas of my life. We're just talking about body image today. But when I really began to understand what was truly important to me and my spirit, soul, essence, whatever we want to call it, then I was able to say, okay, this thing that I'm doing, this choice that I'm making, this internal dialogue, is it aligning with my core values or is it somewhere out of alignment? And if it's out of alignment, what do I need to do to bring it back in? So, in my experience and with my clients, that's absolutely one of the places where we start is understanding what's really important to me.
What if a person did decide that, like their mother, they really value making sure that they're put together in public and put together before their partner sees them, and that's a core value? I imagine you would support that also.
Yeah, that's them. When we start work together, I often start with what's called this wheel of life that has various spokes on it. And one of the spokes is health and aging. Body image would be in there. Body image would go into other couple spokes too, but that would be part of body image. And so if we're looking at that particular spoke, I say, okay, on a 1 to 10 scale, 1 being completely unhappy and 10 being fulfilled, where are you on that scale? And if they say, I'm a 9, I am perfectly happy to get up and spend 2 hours getting ready for the day and doing my hair and doing my creams and all the things that keep me looking youthful and feeling beautiful, I'd say, great. We don't need to work on that.
Right.
We can omit that. If your happiness factor highest is a 10 and you're at a 9, there is not one thing that we need to change here. But now let's just hop over to this other side of the wheel about peace of mind. And if you were to get a call and you had to run out the door in an emergency and you didn't have time to do your 2 hour beauty routine, how is your peace of mind? And if it's disturbed, then maybe that is something for us to look at.
Yeah,
Because if there's no disturbance, there's nothing to look at,
exactly. That's,
right?
as yoga therapists, we help people get in touch with what is causing suffering and do some self-reflection on that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm curious about, we've had the last few years a really strong kind of body positivity movement, meaning, look, women can be different shapes and men, and non-binary people can be different shapes and sizes. And if that's how they feel good in their body or we feel good in our body, we should celebrate that. I feel like that's swinging back a little bit in the last 6 months, that
Yeah.
moving away from that again. But, when we look at things like body positivity, body neutrality, body sovereignty, how does that fit into all of this in your mind?
I think in a way, different strokes for different folks. One of the beautiful pieces of yoga therapy is that we are working with the mind to move down into the body. We're working with the body to move up into the mind. And so different things work for different people. For some people, body positivity is what helps their mind and their body work at the most optimal feelings for them, most optimal energy, most optimal navigating life. And body positivity, right? Emphasizing a loving and accepting attitude towards a person's body, boosting self esteem, promoting body confidence, all of these things are really useful for people. In my own experience, the positivity thing did not work so well because for me, as a person who abused my body for so many years, and it was something that I was trying to escape, saying something positive about myself was like going from 0 to 100. There was absolutely no way I could say anything positive about my body or my experience of it then and feel like I just wasn't piling a bunch of bullshit in the mirror, right? Body neutrality is where I ended up for many years, and I still would have partial of that, right? So body neutrality is just simply encouraging just kind of a neutral stance about the body. My body is a function of how I navigate my day-to-day life. I need it to drive, I need it to work, I need it to eat, I need it to do these things, and I'm not going to hate it, I'm not going to love it. It's just a vehicle. It's a vehicle for me to experience my life. But Body sovereignty or sovereignty, which is really, I would say, where I'm more in the spectrum of now, more fully, is really about allowing people just to be who they are in their body, their mind, their spirit, meeting people exactly as they are. Because not everybody has the same values as I do. Not everybody cares about running a half marathon. Not everybody has a desire to go on a 10-mile hike, right? We're all different. And so the body sovereignty, especially as a yoga therapist, allows me to meet my clients. So, as a coach, and meet my clients exactly where they are and not put any judgment or expectation as to what they want for themselves or how they look or how they feel. It really is a more, to me, generous and loving space. I think also as a yoga practitioner, and especially in the type of yoga that I've practiced for so long, which is a Tantra Hatha base, it's not about dismissing our experiences. It's about leaning into them and learning from them, even the ones that feel crappy. And so for me, body positivity, any kind of too much positivity can overlook important experiences. And so sometimes I think that can throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. But again, different strokes for different folks. And I think our job as human beings, partially, is to find what diminishes our suffering the most, helps us feel the most vital and most joy that we can, and move through the world in that way.
Yeah. I'm just curious, and you don't have to answer any of my questions. We can edit them out if you want. But at this point where you had not had a great relationship with your body in childhood, and then you started yoga and you kind of had this realization that, wow, I can have an internal compass. I don't actually just have to listen to everybody out there. What happened then? Did you start, like, specifically what happened then? Did you start feeling like, wow, I want to fuel my body with food that makes me feel lighter and more expansive and more energized? Like, what was the practical application of that realization that you got to be in charge of your body and it really was nobody else's business and you were going to do what needed to be done to feel good with yourself? But
Mm-hmm.
what happened specifically then?
One of the areas that I've done a lot of research in and do a lot of work with people is behavior change. And with behavior change and all behavior, we have external influences and internal influences. And for me, because I had so much, like, didn't want to be in the body, didn't want to acknowledge my body, it was for me using external influences to help me change the internal. And so, because I really jumped into yoga because it touched me so deeply the very first time, I started with basic principles like ahimsa. And so I thought, okay, if I'm going to apply this idea of non-harming to my life, what would that look like physically? Okay, well, physically, it means I'm probably gonna, like, take a walk a couple times a week because all bodies need movement, right? That the body in motion stays in motion. What would that look like in my internal dialogue? Right. And this kind of goes back to the body positivity. You know, some yoga practices and all kinds of people use affirmations. I'm not the kind of personality then or now where I could have an affirmation where at 100 pounds overweight and still smoking cigarettes and still drinking, but going to yoga, would be able to say, I am healthy and strong. No, like, no, that just felt like bullshit. And so then I felt like I was lying to myself, which then made me do more self-defeating behavior that didn't align with my core values, right?
I just had this image. I have to tell you, you're in yoga class, it's working for you, you're loving it. You go out to your car and have a cigarette. And then you repeat your mantra, I am healthy and strong.
Right, but it's true. It's true. And thankfully, that's not how I show up in the world anymore. So for me, it was starting with basic, simple principles of something like ahimsa, non-harming. So like if I was getting dressed in the morning and I would say to myself, and Amy, I can't even tell you how many times I said this to myself. It almost makes me want to cry now that I think back about it. God, you are such a fat slob.
Mm.
Like I would say that to myself so much. And going to I'm healthy and fit and strong, no. So I would start to shift my dialogue so that when I heard myself say that, and when we know about the unconscious, subconscious, and conscious, we're only hearing ourselves say it, but we're saying it a lot more. But when I would catch myself, I would say, no, I am working on my best self. Or no, I am committed to living where I feel healthy and free in my body. Right. So it wasn't the 0 to 60 or 0 to 100. It was a 0 to 20 or 30 that felt more authentic and attainable and something that didn't feel self-defeating. Because we do that too, right? We think, oh, right, we're talking about body image and so much of it's tied to weight loss. And we think, okay, I want to get healthy. I'm going to lose 20 pounds. I'm going to go to gym 5 days a week. And I'm going to make all my meals on Sunday night. And I'm going to drink 64 ounces of water a day. And I'm not going to drink alcohol. And on Monday afternoon, when the whole day has become a shit show, I might be like, oh God, I need a glass of wine. I'm not going to the gym. And then I've now set myself up for failure. Right. So part of it, so to circle full back around to your question, getting clear on what's true to you. What's true for me? Let me start to unpeel the layers and let go of what I've been taught by my family, by peers, by society, by culture, right? Because sometimes our culture and our society conflict. And so what have I been told by external influences? How do I feel on the inside? And who do I want to reflect of who I am on the outside? And then simple, short steps, one by one, by one, by one. All of life, body image, life, everything is a curious puzzle. And we just put it together piece by piece. And at some point, we might get the big picture. At some point, we might not. But we just keep trying to see what fits and what doesn't fit. And if it doesn't fit, you take it out and you try the next piece and you move on.
Yeah. A couple things. It's reminded me of watching Ted Lasso, and anyone who's watched Ted Lasso knows that at one point they come up with this term called the lasso effect or the lasso way. And that's what it is. It's these tiny, imperceptible moments over time that all add up to a picture. This puzzle, you didn't even know what the picture was until you started fitting the pieces in there. And then at some point you're like, oh, I think this is a picture of me.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? I hear you saying we're not going to jump from 0 to 60 and we're not going to suddenly become this health nut. But there is a little research showing that when we adopt a new identity, and I think we can define that for ourselves, that we have a better chance of making these health behavior changes. So, for instance, they're seeing that people who've never worked out in their life, who've never been fit or athletes, if they sign up for a 5K and start to kind of identify with the other runners, and now they got their running shorts and okay, they got the little fanny pack, and they start seeing themselves as amateur runner, that helps us make the jump to then say in our own mind, well, I value running, I want to be here. And a runner wouldn't go have a cigarette in their car. That it helps us kind of frame ourselves in a new way so that we can let go of some of our health behavior change things that we have said we want to let go of. I think we could even do that in small increments. I don't think that has to be 0 to 60. It could be, I want to be the kind of person that says kind things to themselves in the mirror.
Right.
What do you think of that? Have you thought about that? I know this is like a random question for you.
Well, you said something interesting in your little setup there, and that caught my attention, which was I have a value of running,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if running for whatever reasons, for some people it's important, they want to run for whatever reason, right? I enjoyed running for like 5 minutes. I always enjoyed the after running,
Yeah.
not because it was done, but the endorphins,
Sure.
right? I
Yeah.
always enjoyed the after running. The running itself was kind of, I didn't really enjoy it. But that said, what running tapped into was one of my core values, which was a feeling of freedom and lightness.
Mm.
So again, it comes back to understanding, like, who do I really want to be? Who do I want to be? Not what anybody else told me, not what the beauty commercials told me, not what the medical industrial complex told me, not what society told me. We have so much input these days telling us how we should look and what our body shape and size should be. It really comes back to the values. And yes, I do believe there is some beneficial impact to that idea of fake it till you make it, right? Dress for success, right? All these ideas, they're not bunk. They can't stand alone. If anybody ever watched TV, you might remember this show that was on TV for quite a while. I don't have TV anymore, so I don't know if it's still on, but The Biggest Loser. And it was where a group of people who were identified as, and I'm using air quotes, morbidly obese, because we could get into a whole discussion about the BMI scale and all of that, but that's a whole nother podcast. Right. But The Biggest Loser, the people would go on the show and they would work out 6, 7, 8 hours a day. Their food was really restricted. Their bodies underwent huge changes almost all of the time. But if you follow the people after they left the show, more often than not, they ended up gaining some, all, or more of the weight back. And that's because their inner image was never aligned with their outer image, right? Our self image. Who am I? And again, that space of discernment and awareness of who am I and who do I want to be in the world and what's creating my suffering and what brings me joy, what creates vitality for me. And if we don't answer those questions, then the going to the weight loss ranch or the signing up for a 5K might be a short lived experience.
Yeah. So to close that loop, I think I hear what you're saying is choose an identity. If you want to choose an identity to help you with your health behavior change, make sure it's very closely aligned to your inner values so that
Yeah,
it's sustainable long term.
exactly. And, it's those core values then that really become the spoke for all of our lives, for health and aging, for growth and maturity, for personal relationships. And they really become the spoke for the center hub for all of the spokes of our life. And then it helps me understand and tease apart these important questions. What language am I using when I talk about myself and my experiences and who I am in the world? What has my family taught me about beauty, aesthetics, health, aging? And now that I'm 50, is there some part of me that thinks I'm incapable of something? Or now that I'm 60 or 70 or 80 and my body's not operating the way it used to when I was 60 or 50 or 40, right? The body image isn't just about health, about beauty. It really does go through all things. And then, body image and profession. I wanted so deeply to be a yoga teacher for over 5 years before I actually went and filled out the application. And the one thing that held me back was my perception and belief that I couldn't be a yoga teacher because I was 100 pounds overweight and I didn't have a body that looked like a yoga teacher.
Yeah.
That was the one thing that held me back. So we have body image issues that can arise from our profession, from what we're told about ourselves and how we're embodied in the world, from all of these things. And so we have to come to our true north
Yeah.
in order to really create health spoke that doesn't just create suffering for us as we mature through life.
I love that you have walked the road, the people that you're supporting and helping you walk the road before them, but you're also not assuming that their journey is going to be anything like yours. You're using the tools and technologies of yoga and coaching to help them understand themselves better, to kind of set up the framework to be held while they do some self reflection, self awareness, self realization.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In my work, I so often combine the coaching and the yoga therapy together. My job is to help people decide for themselves, right? Sovereignty in all areas. It's for them to decide for themselves what is best, what feels best, what looks best. It's not for me to decide.
Yeah. Well, I would like to show your website. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it? It's Tra Kirkpatrick, TraKirkpatrick. It will be in the show notes. But what do you want us to know about you and the work that you do, Trey?
My goal in this work is to help people reduce suffering. I suffered so much of my life, partly because of external influences and other people's behavior and choices, but largely because I took those truths on as my own. In my work with people, my hope is to help you discover what's important for you and then to create a life or area of your life that helps you to feel more in line with that internal compass.
Yeah. I see right underneath your name on the website, it says yoga therapist and life strategist. I love that.
Yeah, thank you.
And so you developed, I'm not sure if you're running it at the moment, but maybe you are, this wonderful program. I remember when you did it called Weightless, Let Go and Get
Yeah.
Lighter. Take the Weightless Journey, an 8-week program to help you create a stronger body and lighter life.
So the program is not currently running right now, but it will be running again later this year. Because body image can be a big part of our navigation of the world as embodied women in this country, the thing that I wanted to connect to, which was really part of my own journey, is becoming lighter. I mean, part of it was my body because I was 100 pounds overweight, but that's not really what it was about. What was creating heaviness in my life wasn't about my body, it was the internal stuff. Although some people come to it for better health, that's not usually why they come to it. They come to it because they want to realign some part of their internal experience and external experience so that they feel more empowered and more in peace.
Mm. Like we said at the beginning, the outcome may be that there is weight loss when you kind of unpack the areas of your life that are mentally, emotionally, spiritually making you feel heavy.
Yeah. To go back to my very first yoga practice in the late 1990s, I didn't start yoga to lose weight. I
Mm.
didn't go on that journey to lose weight, although, unfortunately, that's another industry in which, getting the yoga booty and losing weight is, used as a hook to get people in. Okay, different strokes for different folks. And the body changed, my body changed as a result of the internal changes that I began experiencing because of my yoga practice. Not everybody is that way.
Right.
And that's the beauty of yoga therapy and coaching is I've worked with people that I'm like, no, I need to work with the mind. Like I have to start here because they're more cerebral. That's how they are. That's how they process the world. And so we are starting with things like mantras and affirmations and post-it notes, reminding ourselves because we're working with the mind to move down. Other people like me, it wasn't that way. It was working with the body and back up. So then we take a different approach. And so, whatever you do, yoga, top down, bottom up, however you do it, just my invitation to anyone listening is to be curious, to stay open, and to really also always ask yourself, what else could be true?
I think we get stuck in our own story and start to think that's the end of the story. There's no more chapters in this book. I've been this way for 2 decades, or, whatever your story is. I'm kind of getting the feeling that you're like, no, you can write the next chapter.
Yeah, we are the only ones who are writing the stories of our lives.
Yeah.
That's it. We are it. And I'm not saying that as a way to say your experiences don't matter, your trauma doesn't matter. I'm not saying that as any of that. There is an invitation in the universe that says, Amy, Trey, my beautiful radiant one, come hither and you can create a life that you design that's based on what's important to you. And some of that might be body image, health, and aging, and some of it might not be.
Yeah.
But I do know this. When we are walking this planet Earth, we're all doing it the same way through a body. And so some of our work just has to take place through there.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Trey, for this beautiful sharing today. It was so nice to
Thank
see you
you.
after a few years.
I know it was so good to see you more live
I know.
than just post memes on social media. So it's been great. And congratulations on all your changes and moves and endeavors. And I look forward to watching as your path continues to unfurl.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. Glad to be here with you today, Amy, and all the listeners.
Thank you, Trey, for being with us today and having the courage to share your inner journey with us. There's another person that I just want to bring attention to because she's been such a profound influence on my life. I'm sure many of you know this woman. She also works in this area of body image, eating disorders, and she has I think a podcast of her own called Real Body Talk. It's Jennifer Kretzoulis. I always say her name wrong, but her last name is Kreatsoulas. And she's also written a couple of great books on this topic of our relationship with our body. One is called The Courageous Path to Healing. And then another one is Body Mindful Yoga. And so the reason I say that Jennifer, whether she knows it or not, has been such a strong teacher to me is because many, many years ago, I was looking at body image and the gunas. All of you know I'm obsessed with the gunas and really love to create kind of visual images around the gunas and different topics. So Jennifer was so generous. I just contacted her out of the blue. I said, I'm a fan of your work. You've done such great work in the world. I know so many people that are influenced by you. I said, I have some ideas about body image and gunas and how these two things go together. And Jennifer gave her time to me for free. And we kind of did some emailing back and forth, looking at a body image assessment and how does that play out in the gunas. So in terms of vata, some of you know these words, vata, pitta, kapha, sattva. In the vata realm, it's more like over exercising, feeling restless, having low confidence, or having insecurity, really wanting that external validation, maybe feeling isolated or anxious or low self-worth. So how does body image show up in the gunas? When we go more to the pitta, it becomes more judgment, controlling, competitive, comparison, perfectionism, very critical of ourselves, being mean to ourselves, maybe even feeling very self-conscious and not accepting of ourselves, and maybe even some controlling habits around food or exercise. And then when we go to the kapha type of guna that body image can manifest as, there's more guilt and shame, maybe feeling kind of disgusted with ourselves and self-punishing, negative thinking, feeling very dissatisfied with our body and punishing it. There may be a lot of sadness or depression or shame. And the reason I bring this up is because when we work with the gunas on all the layers of our human system, we can almost bypass the body image discussion. As we bring our gunas more and more closer to being balanced, all of these things start to become pacified. It's almost like a back door into the body image discussion without having to directly go for it, because so many of us are triggered by thoughts and cognition around body image. What if we just reduced vata? What if we just reduced kapha? What if we just reduced pitta and just kind of let it unfold and let the changes in all the layers of our system shift? Now, the thing that Jennifer taught me that I think is so beautiful is that we can learn to be confident, compassionate, kind to ourselves. We can start to have a steady sense of self that is completely separate from the number on the scale. We can start to notice those self-harming thoughts about I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I don't look right, I don't show up in this dress the way that I want. We can just start to notice, oh, there's that thought again, and not give it too much weight and not take it as reality. We can find contentment within our own bodies, and we can see how they ebb and they flow. And our window of tolerance for uncomfortable thoughts and feelings and sensations around our bodies, we can watch that, observe it, and not react to that. So what Jennifer taught me is that this gold zone ability, what we might call the sattva part, is completely separate from the weight on the scale, how we fit in our clothes, how we look, the external validation that we get. Like, it's completely separate from all of that. That our God-given right is to feel at ease and good and happy in our body, no matter what size clothes, no matter what the scale says. It doesn't have to match. And in fact, she taught me that a lot of times the people who have the body closest to what society might say is an acceptable body actually have very, very big challenges with their body image in the vata, pitta, or kapha directions. So to kind of separate that out and say, my image of myself and how I feel in my body is independent of what anybody else thinks or says or projects onto me. That was a real game changer for me. And then again, to just be able to not label it, not diagnose it, and just work with the gunas to feel better more of the time, both in my body to feel lighter and expansive, but also in my mind to feel confident and compassionate, and to be able to just notice what I'm thinking about myself and not think that there has to be a truth. Just because I'm thinking it doesn't mean it's true. So I just wanted to give that shout out to Jennifer. She's really had a big impact in my life, whether she knows it or not, and always using that body image chart according to the gunas with my clients. So thank you so much. And one more thank you to Trey. It was lovely to be with you today. And to everyone out there listening, thanks for hanging in there for a little bit of a long episode. And we will see you next week. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you to our guest this week, and thank you for listening to the Yoga Therapy Hour. Something that I've been working on behind the scenes with my friend Marlisa Sullivan is going to come out in 2026. We've been writing a book together for the last year where we go deeply into yoga philosophy and yoga therapy. And then we have the scientific vagus nerve, heart rate variability, all sorts of polyvagal theory to back up why it is that yoga philosophy is right on track and why it's been helping people for thousands of years. We're turning in our book this fall to the publisher, and in the spring of 2026, it should come out. So we're just giving you a little heads up that will be coming out soon. And when it does, we can't wait to share it with you. Thank you for listening to the Yoga Therapy Hour. We wish you a wonderful week. We hope that somehow, in a small way, we've contributed to your well-being so that you can go out and share that well-being with others. That's what life is all about, bringing in the goodness through you and then shining it out to the world. We need you more than ever. So let's all get out there, do good, be good, and have a great week.